A spokesperson for China's foreign ministry, deflecting reporters' questions on the protest, refused to answer if China was looking to end its strict COVID-19 policies.
CNN senior international correspondent Ivan Watson, he is in Hong Kong. Hong Kong has its own history of protests, but also of crackdowns. You've seen some protests there, people defying the police as well in solidarity. How extensive?
Well, two kind of small demonstrations of people, not more than 100 demonstrators, I would say, at the one that I visited a few hours ago, but all the more rare because Hong Kong has basically banned protesting and cracked down on independent media and opposition political parties and thrown activists into prison. And it just goes to show how the very unusual nationwide protests that we've seen in China have this power to kind of inspire people here in this former British colony as well. Jim and Piana, I think this is probably the biggest nationwide manifestation of public discontent that we've seen in China in a generation. I spoke to one of the people who was out in Hong Kong, a man who only wanted to give his first name, who's originally from Shanghai, and he described himself as a victim of China's zero COVID policy. Take a listen.
I am a victim. Right? I cannot go home for many years, like 2 to 3 years, right? My parents were locked down for 3 months, and even relatives of my good friends, they suicide because of the lockdowns, right? And I know people die because of it, because of the side effects of this policy, right? I think everyone who has a sane mind should say something or do something to stop this unreasonable social measure.
Now, we have been able to confirm 16 separate protests in mainland China across 11 different cities. And of course, we have reports of additional protests, but it's so hard to make sense of that and confirm it, verify it, given the intense censorship on the mainland. Jim and Biana.
Just incredible to see these protests happening organically, not in 1 or 2 cities, but several. Ivan Watson, thank you.
Joining me now is Bonnie Lin. She's the director of the China Power Project at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, also worked at the Pentagon on China and Taiwan issues. Bonnie, good to have you on this morning.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Biana.
So first, let's begin. These are unusual. They're courageous because of the price that people pay for dissent in China, and they're national, at least in many large cities. Do they pose a genuine threat to the Chinese government?
I think right now it's a bit early to say that because we're on day 2.5 or day 3. If you look at the large-scale protests that has had a significant impact on China's leadership, I think Tiananmen 1989 is the best example. The protesting activity started in April, and we didn't see the culmination of the effect until June, right? So we still have a little bit of time to see how much this will spread. And as mentioned by Ivan earlier, what we're seeing right now is at least 16 different locations, but we still don't have a sense of how large this is. It seems like each location is a couple hundred people per location. And if it's spread out across the country, it's actually relatively not too difficult for China to clamp down if it's only a couple hundred per location. But if we start seeing thousands and tens of thousands in one location, I think particularly as it gets centered around Beijing, I think that would be much more of a challenge for the Chinese government to deal with.
But the fact that there are already 16 protests tells you that China's very powerful censorship machine has not been able to act quickly enough to take down some of these videos and posts denouncing zero COVID policy, denouncing even Xi Jinping himself. What does that tell you about their limitations? Because this is really the first time we've seen them challenged to this extent under Xi Jinping.
That's a great question. I think what we need to see is to what extent some of the measures that the Chinese government has taken during these initial protests, including more policing, more arrests, more censorship, to what extent this will actually curb the protests moving forward. So what we don't know is, for example, tonight, Monday night, or tomorrow, if this is going to continue to escalate, or if China will be able to sort of tone this down a little bit. But what I would say is, even if we see more protests growing in the next couple of days, we don't see the same political conditions that we saw in 1989, which was a very divided Chinese leadership in which one leader could take the fall for this. Right now, we saw Xi Jinping consolidate power during the 20-party Congress. I don't see any potential major challengers to him right now. So it could be possible that one of his deputies take the fall, but I don't see Xi Jinping himself taking the fall for that.
Yeah, he's deliberately eliminated challengers. Let's talk about China's zero COVID policy, which helped spark what's going on right now. China tried to relax this policy a bit earlier this month, but then was forced to tighten restrictions again because cases went up. I mean, the fact is, its COVID policy is failing, really, and they don't have the medical resources to handle if more and more people get sick. What can Xi Jinping and the Chinese government do realistically to tweak its COVID policy to give some ground to these people, or can't it?
I think Xi Jinping and the Chinese government is in a very tough spot. So China is now at a record number of COVID cases, a little bit under 40,000. And just to put that in context, that's actually around the same number that the United States has. But that's the official Chinese reported number. We actually don't know if that's the actual number. It actually could be much larger. The main issue is, as you mentioned, the vaccines, right? We know that about 90% of China's population is vaccinated, but only 60% of its elders are actually boosted. And we also know that China's vaccines don't work quite well as our mRNA vaccines. So as China looks forward, the main issue is, can it afford to open up at the risk of large numbers of its population potentially contracting the virus? And then depending on their vaccination, or if they're not vaccinated, they could be at risk of potentially dying or suffering some severe complications.
And China's refused to import those better working mRNA vaccines. Bonnie Lin, good to have you on. I'm sure we're going to be talking about this again. Thanks so much.
I want to talk more about this, these lockdowns and the COVID policy. Dr. Amesh Adalja is a senior scholar at the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, joining me live. And Doctor, we are seeing cases rise, but the reality there is that these lockdown measures have led to immense human suffering across China. And as I say, a rise, ironically, in cases, or perhaps not ironically. What's your view on this zero COVID strategy? And does it make sense to you?
Zero COVID has never made sense to me. And you can see when you try to implement it, it's a complete failure. And I think that stems from the fact that this is a virus that can't be eradicated, that can't be eliminated, that transmits efficiently, that was always destined to become endemic. Your goal with COVID-19 has always been to separate cases from hospitalizations and deaths, to remove the ability of the virus to crush hospitals, not to eradicate or eliminate it. That's a fantasy. And it's unfortunate that people in China have had to suffer so long because of the Chinese government's adherence to kind of fantastical thinking that is not based in reality.
For those, I mean, zero COVID policy has basically meant very few people, although the numbers are ticking up, have actually had COVID, which means, I guess, but correct me if I'm wrong, it is much, much more likely as they come out of COVID that cases will tick up. There's no immunity, correct?
There's no immunity from infection because so many people have not been infected. What they do have fairly high vaccination rates in the general population, but we know that those vaccines are probably not as effective as the Western vaccines. So there are a lot of people that have this kind of immunity gap that will increase cases. But I think it's more important for China to focus on protecting those at risk for hospitalization by putting effective vaccines into them, getting drugs like Paxlovid available, and making sure they have capacity, rather than this unsustainable approach that can never end based on what this virus is. If they stick to this, there's no end in sight, and it really is going to lead to untold suffering, both of people's lives and economically for their country.
So if the lockdown were to be dropped, what would that look like in China, given current cases and vaccine rates, to your mind?
what we would see is a surge in cases. That's not going to be anything surprising. The virus is still there. It's going to spread. The question is how many high-risk people are going to get infected. And we know that China did things backwards. They actually didn't make the vaccine available to people above 60 early on. And we know that that's still trickling down. And there's not that many high-risk people that are vaccinated. So I do think that they would see a surge in hospitalizations and deaths among the high risk. Whether they're able to handle that with capacity, that's a question that only they can answer, because they've been able to build hospitals very quickly. But the point is, they're going to have to do this at some point. They've had 2.5 years to use mRNA vaccines in their population, yet they've refused them. So it really, to me, is a situation of their complete doing. It really reflects utter incompetence from the Chinese government to allow this to fester on for 2.5 years in this manner with this magical thinking.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Thank you, Doctor.